I really think this is one of the most iconic ones. I looked up some lists online of the top Covermount albums that had an impact on people's tastes. This is probably up there in terms of heavy music as one of the most influential.
Hey folks, welcome to On Some Podcast. My name is Mark, joined by Christopher.
Confused.
And here's Risen.
Bonjour.
David is here. Hi David.
That's what Easter does for you.
Yeah.
Brings them back.
Brought some back from the dead.
I feel like I'm in a little cave right now.
We are in a cave. We're in a
I
new...
feel like I could roll away the stone.
We are in a new location, which is completely odd, but nice. It's nice, cozy.
It is. It's very cozy.
This week we are doing Hometaping Reviews Music Volume 2 by Kerrang.
Hometaping Volume 2, also known as unofficially Refused Music, I think, because of the cover that Casey Chaos designed for it.
We've got a prop, which Dave is holding.
Yeah, we actually have the CD.
He has the CD.
Yep. Yeah, we remember getting this. So we've talked about this before.
This is obviously one of our Covermount mixtape episodes where we fished this out of a bag of Covermount mixtapes, some of which were donated by listeners to the pod, actually. And I think this was a highly identifiable one. I really remember this one quite clearly. It was issue 918 of Kerrang from August 2002. Prodigy were on the cover. Other artists featured were Incubus, Ash, 100 Reasons, Offspring, Mark, you heard of them? Jane's Addiction, they were all in there. 2002, that's what was happening in the world.
Oh yeah, I remember that new Jane's Addiction album.
Yeah, it was
came
the
out.
Strays.
Yeah, it had like one half decent song. And then was
Just
actually quite
Because.
shit.
Just Because.
Yeah.
So, just to give people a little bit of backstory, right? We've been doing these cover mounts occasionally for the past however many fucking years. And I have always said that these kind of things mean nothing to me, right? But as I was listening to this, I was getting increasingly little bits of like, I've heard that fucking song before. I really heard that song before. And I think I actually did have this because I was reading Kerrang at that time in my life.
Yeah.
So I think I actually had this.
I really think this is one of the most iconic ones. I looked up some lists online of the top Covermount albums that, you know, had an impact on people's tastes, and I couldn't find any. No, I could, but they were all like Mojo and shit like that. But I still stand by the thesis that this is probably up there in terms of heavy music as one of the most influential, because it does. It really is. I think it stood the test of time as well. It's a really, because he didn't just pick from that era. It's a really diverse selection, but we'll go into it.
I think that's what makes it stand out from a lot of cover albums, though.
Absolutely.
Is that it's curated.
It's got a really strong sense of Casey Chaos from Amen, who curated it. It's got a really strong sense of his personality in it and his personal listening habits.
So
if
I'm right, the first one was the Hives.
Was it?
I'm pretty sure the first home tape one was the Hives.
Right. Interesting.
And then he did the second one. I can't remember if there was another one. I feel like there was, but I should have checked.
Research.
But yeah, I like the concept because your classic cover record on a music magazine back in the day was basically just a mix of shit that PRs had sent in and wanted.
Paid for a lot of time,
paid for, or just like you can fly over and interview Incubus if you put them on the CD and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably caveat actually at that point, because I think that's a really salient point you're making. If you go, we have an episode which is about the history of compilations and cover mounts in that context, and it talks about, there's a bit of like the unknown about how some bands got on them. Some of them, you can tell that the band has the bargaining power, and it's a privilege for the magazine to put them on there, whereas others, you can tell they've literally paid to get onto that cover alongside that band in the hope that it boosts the profile of their act. It does work sometimes, it doesn't work others. You can go back and listen to that original Covermount mix thing that we did, where it analyses that whole, the evolution of the whole thing. The reason we cover them is because, we obviously discuss albums that had a big impact on our personal listening. But it's easy to overlook how important some of these compilations were, because back then, sorry to do that, but back then, there was not that playlist thing on the internet. It was you got music from the front of magazines a lot of the time and from friends and stuff, and so it was a really significant way to spread news of new bands or new songs, new releases, anything unusual. You know, you had rarities showing up in them and things like that. It was quite a big deal. And when when a magazine such as Kerrang or Metal Hammer or something like that came out with a Covermount, people did talk about it, and you know, you would get chatting in the pub. Did you listen to that? They came out. What did you think? I thought the third one was good. Blah blah blah. I think it merits talking about because they did have as much impact, I think, as a lot of albums. And yeah, I really think this is up there with some of the most impactful. As we said, the thing that makes us different is that it was curated. And I do get the sense that it was genuinely curated. I don't think it's necessarily like a kind of fudge where it's like, oh, you know, Casey, we'll put your name in it, but we're going to decide. I think this screams Casey Chaos's taste in music, at least from everything I know about the guy. So I sort of looked into Casey Chaos a wee bit because you have to bear in mind, I mean, he died in December there. I think it was December the 20th last year.
59, I think he was.
59 years old from a heart attack. But I looked into Casey Chaos a wee bit because I think it'd be good to provide a little bit of context for who he was. Because actually, I have to admit that I didn't know all that much about Casey Chaos until this moment, right? So, first of all, we have the prop. There is a blurb in the sleeve where he talks about being asked to do this. He describes, after he got the invitation to do it, waking up in the night with ideas of things and noting them down next to his bed. He actually said he got back in touch with Kerrang and asked if he could do a double disc, and they told him to piss off. He
can't afford it, mate. Can't afford 2 CDs and all the licensing.
He phoned Henry Rollins and Satyr from Satyricon personally to ask for an unreleased track by both. I've
got the numbers as well, man, so I could get them on this podcast as well.
Let me dial in there. Yeah. He'd been on Henry Rollins' TV show, or he was actually. Sorry, I beg your pardon. He was on Henry Rollins' TV show. But yeah, apparently he had to whittle this collection down from 60 songs. It's still pretty goddamn long, but he whittled it down, and as I say, designed the cover. So Casey Chaos, Karim George Chmielinski. I mean, I don't know where that surname comes from. It sounds like Eastern Europe. And Karim, I don't know. Born in Trenton, New York in 1965. Died in Los Angeles 20th December, as we said last year, from a heart attack. He'd lived with heart and lung problems, and he carried an inhaler, which he really needed as well. His family had moved to Florida when he was young, which apparently he hated. He was supposedly a bit of a loner. He got really into skateboarding. Now, this was fascinating. He was so good that he was a semi-professional skateboarder at the age of 10.
I remember reading that.
Going around the touring circuit. Did you know that he made enough money by the age of 15 he helped his parents buy their home from skateboarding? He became pen friends with Ian Mackay and Henry Rollins because he was so into them. And there's photos of him with them at Minor Threat and Black Flag shows from the early 1980s. He started a band called Disorderly Conduct in Florida. They actually rose to reasonable prominence in the scene. I think they were particularly notorious because of his on-stage behaviour, which was pretty wild, a theme that persists. He said he got a lot of abuse in the area of Florida he lived in, especially of the, quote, freak faggot variety, and decided to move to LA. Disorderly Conduct kind of rebooted in Los Angeles and then became Amen. He bumped into the guy Rick Agnew, who's in a fairly famous band called Christian Death, and he was invited to sing a song by them. He actually ended up playing bass, joining them, writing multiple songs for them, and meanwhile he was writing the Amen debut album, which was actually an album called Slave, which most of us don't know them for. That's actually got the word slave slashed into his arm on the cover, so I guess it probably wouldn't have gotten a release like that either. But the band really exploded after recording the self-titled Amen album in 1999 and We Have Come For Your Parents in 2000 with a fella called Ross Robinson, bit of a star of our new metal mixtape back in the day. Dave's a
old Ross.
Big Ross Robinson mark, aren't you, Dave?
It has been mentioned once or twice.
How many Ross Robinson albums do you think you've got in your house?
Well, I mean, I don't have any albums because I give them all away. But I would have said that in my CD collection at its peak, maybe 25.
Yeah.
He's my Steve Albini, isn't he? To you,
I think
Chris.
he is.
To be fair, he's probably less cancelable than Steve Albini. So.
Well, I'm not sure. Like, I think he was very well known for putting all the bands that he worked with through the ringer. you know.
Yeah, do you know?
I think if you recap what Steve Albini,
Yeah, true.
I mean, can I just point out, I got sent a listing from the auction of Steve Albini's personal possessions by his estate.
Mm-hmm.
He's selling a copy of the third Burzum album
Mm-hmm.
for $1,000.
Yeah, well, there you are.
I don't want to put anybody in blast here, but there's a photographer from Glasgow that I followed that posted a photograph today with Burzum as the song to it, which I thought was a bit naff.
Edgy
as fuck.
Looking around about photographers. I mean, you're a photographer. Wait a minute.
I've-
Is this your
I'm by no means am I a photographer, mate. I'd like to be, but I'm not.
amusing
That
point.
was me.
I think this is a great point here. Okay, so Louder Sound have an obituary on them, an extended obituary, and it describes how Coma America, a track that a lot of people will know
Yep.
by Amen, was about the aftermath of 9/11.
Mhm.
That would make Casey Chaos a very, very gifted man because it came out 2 years before.
Yeah, I was going to say that came out on, that was their debut record.
The thing is,
Or not the debut, but the big first.
yeah, 99. So Casey went on the Henry Rollins show and said that the song was about a sleeping nation that never woke up until 9/11 happened. Now that's vague enough that it doesn't actually specify that the song is about 9/11, but it says it's about the sleeping nation. So anyway, yeah, it's been retconned. That song is not about post 9/11 America. Casey Chaos was big into self-harm, including on stage. There's a couple of really famous instances, one in the London garage and one at a gig in LA involving a broken bottle. The gig had to be abandoned because he was rushed to hospital. At a gig in Barcelona, he knocked himself out completely by hitting the roof, and then he woke up and then the band just kept playing. According to the drummer, he jumped off a 30-foot PA at one gig, missed the pit and hit the ground, but just got up and continued with the gig. He had like multiple broken bones.
But he had to go to hospital for slashing an artery when he was recording that album.
That's right. That was the mythos around it as well.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was a lot of chat about that. At the Reading Festival in 2002, he kind of kneeled down and smashed his head off the stage till it was bleeding. A really self-destructive guy. And in a lot of ways, that excess, I think, was the secret, or one of the secrets to the appeal of the band. It was, I mean, I remember being quite into the self-titled Amen record. But it did also clearly limit their appeal and also their consistency live, in terms of festivals and places taking a chance on booking them, because he was pretty wild and, unpredictable. But his bassist, a guy called John Fannenstock, who was also in Snot, Snot,
Oh, yeah.
Lynn Straight's band, says that off stage, Casey Chaos was kind, caring and soft-spoken and never raised his voice in anger. I mean, in 2019, he was arrested for assaulting a woman at his home in LA, so I don't know how much that holds up. 2012, famously, he was arrested for driving into 15 parked cars.
15.
50. That's
15.
basically, you're playing Skittles at that point,
Yeah,
aren't you?
pretty much, yeah. Was he sober?
I don't think so, no, because he checked into rehab multiple times. As I said, he was in the Henry Rollins show in 2007, where during the interview he called for the killing of political leaders, and the show had to be pulled and deleted from various. So you can still see a version of the interview on YouTube, but it's censored. I think you have to, talking about how it limited their appeal, had he been in a label at that point, he wasn't. I think they were self-releasing, but he would have been dropped for that. Amen were very much grouped in with new metal. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
Ross Robinson is a big part of that, but also they toured with Slipknot, they toured with Machine Head, toured with Cold Chamber, and they signed to Darren Malakian from System of a Down's label. But they were very much a punk rock band. He grew up as a huge hardcore kid, a skate punk kid. We'll obviously go through the track listing here, but there's a lot of punk in this, much more so than new metal.
It's interesting that they kind of fall into this group of bands that, because new metal was so big, they just got punted as new metal, along with Deftones, I guess, Glassjaw. I mean, all under the Ross Robinson label. But there were other bands like that, and I guess labels just didn't know how to. They were just like, right, it's new metal, and
It's probably in the interest of the bands as well, though, in terms of,
short term.
The coattails, short term,
Yeah.
absolutely. Short termism, but I mean, that at the time is probably how labels worked.
Yeah, definitely.
Amen did 4 studio albums and a live record. He was apparently working on an Amen album in 2019 when COVID happened just shortly after, and via the various health issues that he then encountered that never resurfaced. A number of the acts featured on this comp have ties to him. Kinnison was a band that he produced after they gave I think they gave a demo to him at an Amen concert. He played on some stuff for a band called This Is Menace. He had a brief side project called Headband with Twiggy Ramirez and members of the Queens of the Stone Age. And I think quite significantly, he also had a band called Scum with 2 members of Zyklon, as well as Faust of Emperor and also Happy Tom from Turbonegro. So, yeah, fingers in a lot of pies.
Yes.
But
I hadn't released any music for a long time though, had he?
Well, that's the thing. From 2019, his health was very unpredictable. His addiction issues, I think, were still there. Clearly, we had lockdowns for most of 2020 and a lot of 2021. Couldn't get into studios. And I think, I think his personal life was pretty turbulent. I mean, as I said, in 2019, he was arrested for assaulting a woman at his house. So clearly not in the best of states of mind. But yeah, whatever he was working on towards the end of his life never materialised.
Yeah, shame.
Well, we have a wee dig through this. There's plenty of tracks, so we won't dwell too long on the bulk of them, but there's probably a couple that are particularly interesting. It's value for money. There's 26 proper songs here, plus an intro. It's, as I said, the proper tour of Casey Chaos's listening habits, or at least the image he wanted to convey. I mean, there is always that kernel of, like, maintain a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you were making a compilation cassette in the late 90s, that and then giving it to somebody, that was very much about the person you wanted to convey.
That's true. That's
so,
true.
You know,
and
this was all. That's fine.
It was about who were you courting as well, eh? And so at this point, he's kind of courting an audience where he wants credibility as well. He wants to demarcate and you know what Casey.
Well, I'd just like to say, like, he definitely it's not the debut, but Amen album was put out on Roadrunner. And then they re-released it with like some bonus tracks and fell out with him. And he literally said, "Don't buy that album." He was like, "I would rather give it away for free, you know, on tape at our shows." So he was very anti-commercial, and yet he still, you know, at that point, you know, they signed to Virgin for the third album.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a sort of a clash of who he was. He was like, but. Always quite interesting, and I mean, definitely. I think he had credibility.
He seems like a fucking wild card. I mean, there's all this talk about. He used to go to clubs and like do like just like dive bomb through tables and stuff just to be a fucking nuisance. And he was probably a pain in the arse. Like if you ran a venue or a bar, you probably hated the sight of the guy. But he does seem reasonably sincere in his embrace of the punk mindset.
Yeah.
He was legit. I mean, there's photos of like 1982 Black Flag shows with him in the front row, just absolutely going for it. You know, he was in there. So, tough guy to parse, but I don't know. I've got no real reason to be too suspicious of him. I will say he does this brief spoken intro here. Why are the vocal intros on these things always so hellishly shrill and loud? Does nobody know how to normalise a waveform in these places?
Would have been done via a phone call. You know,
why can somebody just not dial down the overall volume of the intro? It's not in line with anything else. It's just so brutally noisy. But yeah, the first one's that. Then we get into track 2, which is Rollins Band and My War. And I think just to set the scene here, there's a little bit of like idol worship, but I mean genuine warmth, I think, between him and Henry Rollins. Like from that 1982 Black Flag gig, there's photos of him with Henry Rollins after it. He clearly really, really liked Henry Rollins. He touches back on Black Flag and Rollins Band and stuff at multiple points. Henry got him on the show. You know, so there's a bit of like reciprocity there. I think there's like a real affection between them to some extent. You know, and Henry Rollins is a pretty savvy, no-nonsense guy, but he still liked him enough to maintain that relationship a bit.
Yeah, he did. That's true.
So it's taken, actually, this track was sort of inverted commas previously unreleased. That's technically true because it was taken from Rise Above 24 Black Flag songs to benefit the West Memphis 3, which was quite a famous compilation that came out to kind of fund the legal case to support the West Memphis 3 boys that were wrongly convicted of murder.
It was technically the Rollins Band's last album because they recorded all the tracks on it, even though they're all covers.
Yeah.
And I think Rollins is on a few songs, but it's mostly guest singers that are on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Mike Patton one with Rollins and stuff.
Yeah, like Joy, what's his face? Slipknot, Corey Taylor's on it. There's loads of, I think Burton C. Bell's on it. There's loads of folk on it. Seems like a really interesting compilation. There's a lot of cool songs on it.
I mean, it's Black Flag songs, but they're done pretty well. This is done pretty well, but
It's
I mean,
done really
it's
well.
him doing his own tune. This
It's a more metally, more metally feeling, I think.
Yeah.
And it sounds significantly better.
Which makes
because,
sense. Yeah.
The first one sounds like a bit like a, I don't know, weird and fuzzy.
So that compilation came out in October of 2002, so approximately a month after this Kerrang. So this is technically previously unreleased. I'll be honest, as regards Rollins Band, and next time we have Rick in the show, he'll probably punch my head in, but I never really liked Rollins Band as much as I wanted to.
Same. Yeah.
Same. Even for me, for this was probably my first introduction to Rollins Band. And even looking back on it now, I'm like, oh yeah, I can usually skip that one, to be honest. I feel like it's more of a philosophical starting point for the record rather than a musical one.
Yeah, it this is going to sound daft. It does feel a bit Luddite. You know, there's just something
It's a bit pub rock.
Yeah, knuckle scrapery pub rock about. Oh my god, I can feel Rick like just they're stretching off to get ready for this beating.
But I think it like a part of this album is that it goes back and shows you influences.
It does.
And stuff, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like, but with this, it's obviously a massive influence. Like, I mean, it's fucking Black Flag, but also it then suffers from being put up against stuff that it is influenced and is also better than it.
Probably. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. I really love. Although I love this song, I think it's a better version than the original.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have a lot. I wouldn't say I adore Black Flag, but you know, when they hit, and this is one of the hits. You know, and I get what you're saying about the whole knuckle dragger thing, because it is the most foundational elements, the building blocks of hardcore music, of a lot of heavy music generally. But no, like I like it. I dig it.
I like Hank. I'm just not that big on Rollins Band.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's like you said earlier on. It's not a Rollins Band song.
Every time they appeared this, we said this about the Crow as well with that track Ghost Rider. It's like, oh man, the Suicide cover, and I'm just like, oh god, it's just a bit. Duh.
I wonder if that's why he stopped doing music. You know,
That he was better at stand up.
Yeah, I think he has said a few times like he would never be in a band ever again. You know, he prefers doing spoken word now. So
yeah. Well, the third track, technically second proper song, third track on this, The Kinnison, and the track's called The Kinnison's Area 53, is a nice example of punk ethics in that it's Casey Chaos kind of paying it forward a bit here. So, first of all, did you know the Kinnison come from a town called Oblong?
Yeah, Oblong, Illinois.
That's just so weird. And they're named after the very edgy comedian Sam Kinison, controversial figure, in a pre-Bill Hicks period. Casey Chaos produced that band, as I said, after they'd handed him a demo at an Amen show. They actually split in 2005, reformed in 2013. I think the height of their fame, they were probably supporting Blink-182. Do you remember Blink-182 did a $1 bill tour in 2003?
Yeah.
All the tickets were at $1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Bubba Sparks was the other support on that.
Fucking hell.
Well, it does make sense for this band because they were on Travis Barker's like Vanity label.
That's right, yeah.
With Sal Records, which I didn't know this, but it only wrapped up or stopped being a thing in 2018. From 2004 to 2018. Like how?
Just let it ride. Just forgot to cancel the payments.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, I remember this band. I remember this song. It's really scuzzy post-hardcore. Yeah,
it's I can hear a lot of the bands it sounds like, but I think it's sort of really quite forgettable. I mean, it's certainly not as interesting as At the Drive-In or whatever, but it's not bad. It's just not really punching.
Yeah, you can hear At the Drive-In, you can hear Quicksand on it. You know,
Trail of Dead.
Yeah.
I think they ended up, because this was off their first record. I think the third record they worked with the guys from Refused.
Oh, right, okay.
That makes sense. There's some of that in this as well.
But yeah, I mean, I was thinking, going back to another point that I've made on many podcasts before, but my music taste and CD collection was very much controlled or curated by the Inverness HMV management. Because I think I would have bought this record if it was an Inverness HMV, but it wasn't. So this is the only song by this band I ever heard.
Travis Packer needs to get his distribution sorted.
Yeah, totally.
He's probably not getting any
because
contacts.
I did like this, and I probably heard this. Was on fairly heavy rotation on my MP3 player.
Wow.
In 2003,
because it only held 4 tunes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I never, in the last 23 years, I then never bothered to say, "Oh, let's look at that album."
I think the thing is, if you know me, you probably know that the post-hardcore thing was right on, you know, it was my sweet spot, but these guys just never really cut it.
Never hit it. No.
It's followed by a fairly big hitter, I think, the fourth track by Satyricon, Fuel for Hatred. Now, Casey Chaos was in the band Scum with Satire, as we said. Satyricon were actually the first of the 90s black metal scene to sign to a major.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mention that, because I remember reading in Kerrang how much a big deal that was. They were like, oh wow, this band, they're on a major label now.
Through,
and it's also weird that happened, frankly. But
so this is from, like, well, put it this way, their first 3 records were pure black metal, but they started to use a lot of heavy metal tropes from their 4th record onwards, which was 1999. So this is clearly just after that. So I would wager that this is probably from that. And it's a bit more fun as a result to me. It wasn't what I expected. It's got a really good riff in it, and I really like the breakdown. And I could probably listen to more of this in a car trip. And I say that as somebody that had pretty much counted myself as not a Satyricon fan, but I think that's because I've only been thinking of the early black metal stuff, which is just meh, totally.
Yeah, there's a lot of new wave British heavy metal kind of vibes in this song. This is probably the most commercial song they'll ever have done, because it was number 4 Norwegian charts, this song.
Wow.
Okay. And they won the song, and the album won like awards at the Norwegian music version of the Grammys or whatever. So yeah, it's interesting.
The video was quite big as well, because it was directed by Jonas Åkerlund.
Oh wow.
Who has, obviously gone on to do more black metal stuff, but had, you know, he'd done music videos for, like, I think he'd already done music videos for like Madonna and stuff.
Oh, right.
And then he did this one.
Wow.
And it was like, I remember it was some naked girl getting slithered around on by a snake or something. It was just a classic black metal, but it was very it's pretty high budget. But yeah, like this album was the start of new Satyricon. And I remember hearing this, and I'd been into black metal for a bit. You know, I'd been listening to Dimmu Borgir and Gridlow Filth, but even
True
Emperor.
Black metal.
But then,
black metal.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll remember hearing this on here, and yeah, there was just something, because it's just got a bit of rock and roll to it.
It's got a death and roll feel for sure.
Totally.
I think it's got a lot of Judas Priest in it. That's the kind of fun bit of it that I hear.
And there's something really rigid about it as well, but it's class. And yeah, I really like this record. And the next 2 albums that Satyricon did are actually
did they
really
keep
good.
Up that kind of funner vibe, or did they go back to?
They went a bit slower. They actually went a bit more doomier, but they were still like rigid riffs. They never really went back proper black metal.
Because I was curious as to whether that sort of met with a bit of hostility when they changed, and then they just sort of like shat the bed and.
No, I think they basically, this is like them finding their sound, and then this is what Satyricon sound like now.
Interesting.
That's cool. I would definitely go back to this. The production is interesting and cool. The guitars sound like a can of bees, which, you know, is classic. That like Scandi death metal sort of, you know, Swedish chainsaw style guitars.
We'll just reamp that in the studio, mate. Just you record that guitar clean, and then I'll bring in my can of bees.
Just plug it in. Yeah. I was actually really surprised at how sparse it sounds for a major label record, because you would think you're making that leap up. You might want to beef things.
I'm not sure how it worked, because they released it on Moonfog, which was like the classic black metal, but then it got co-released on Capitol, I think it was. Right, okay. So I'm not sure if like maybe they just got a distro or something. Like I'm not sure when the money was.
Aye, like the pre-major label deal. It's like the distro, the one before sort of vibe.
Yeah. It's one of the better tunes, I think. Murder Dolls, number 5.
Oh my god,
let's fuck. So I mean, it's kind of silly punk played by members of the goth and new metal scene. It's Wednesday 13 and Joey Jordison
and Polarizing, one of the wrong ones for was it Dope?
Oh, DOPE.
I was turned into be a pedo.
I was going to say, I'm sure
AC Slade was in it. I've met AC Slade a bunch of times, and he now plays guitar for Joan. He played bass for Joan Jett, sorry, and then he now plays guitar for the Misfits, which is insane.
Talking about wrong-uns.
Yeah, but he's such a lovely guy, and he was in this band, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, they only released 2 albums. So my band, I'll not name drop, played a venue in Colchester. Right.
Represent.
By the way, the guy that booked the show was a bass player for Extreme Noise Terror, so get it up, that's cool.
That is cool.
So we played a venue in Colchester the night after Murder Dolls played, Or in fact, no, it might even have been Wednesday 13 when Wednesday 13 was solo.
He's still solo.
Solo inverted commas, like with a band. And I seem to remember that at our show the night after, a bunch of folks turned up expecting it to be the Wednesday 13 gig. I think there was a mistake on the poster. They were disappointed. If you can believe that.
So my first band used to cover Murder Doll songs.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fucking hell, Mark.
Well, I was 16.
Kept that
I was
quiet.
16. It was my first ever time playing music with other people. I wouldn't call it a band because we didn't do any gigs and we didn't record anything. We were just used to practice in an orange hall.
Yeah, but that was your vibe. You're like, yeah, this is.
You
This
can
is
choose
kind
your
of
own
what we want.
pronouns,
But
mate. If you were a band, you were a band.
The thing is, though, like the thing that I really wanted to have probably, the thing I probably needed to have heard at that time in my life, but didn't until much later, was the Misfits. Because
Yeah,
they're
you're
just-
getting a copy of a
yeah,
copy
I've got
of
a
the
copy.
Misfits,
Yeah, exactly. So when I got into the Misfits later on, I was like, oh, like that's kind of what I wanted the Murder to sound like.
Yeah,
You know, why do they sound like the Misfits? And they do a little bit. They've got the same kind of silly energy.
It's budget Misfits. It's like the store's own brand Misfits.
Pretty much. This song could go on like Earth AD or some of the 90s metally kind of Misfits records. I think, I actually think did they maybe do a cover of Die Die My Darling, maybe? I can't remember. But no, yeah, it is budget Misfits. It's Tesco value Misfits, you know.
Yeah.
I tell you what, no budget here. Discharge, track 6, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing, the title track from their 1982 debut, which Terrorizer, for example, voted the #1 punk album of all time. An absolute bona fide classic, that record.
Totally is.
Good stuff, simplistic, aggressive. Known that album was actually known at the time for having that really full, saturated sound. I know it maybe doesn't sound like it now, but it was then. And Tez Roberts is credited with inventing the D beat.
Yeah, the fucking D beat,
Mark
man.
loves a D beat.
Love a D beat.
Thanks for that, Tez.
3 million plays on Spotify this song's got, which is pretty wild for a band,
Yeah.
for a song that's over 40 years old and is a tiny band.
That means it's been on Spotify for 40 years, so
Yeah.
you'd expect it to be
That's right.
picking up this.
They've had 40 years worth of earnings from it.
It's one of the things that the original punk movement did. They were straight on Spotify, man.
It is a classic, you know, a total classic. I don't think it's the best Discharge song, but it's a great song nonetheless.
I hadn't really heard much old school punk or hardcore before I heard this song. I remember, like, I was obviously a metalhead, and I think I had Nevermind the Bollocks and Fresh Fruit from Rotten Vegetables, and that was like my 2 punk go-tos.
Yeah.
And then I heard this, and I was like, oh, okay. It can be filthy.
Yeah, it can be.
I mean,
They became one of the first grind bands as well, didn't they, eventually, Discharge?
Yeah, I think they did. We brought them up on the Pig Destroyer episode. I'm gonna see if people agree with me here or not, but see if you missed that first wave of punk stuff. As a teenager, it was a wee bit hard to get into because it was happening at an era when, you know, Green Day were out and production values were higher, melody was stronger, it was a bigger part of it. Like I was really into Bad Religion and Green Day and used to this big, rewarding sort of melodic, sort of thick slabs of music.
Yeah.
And it didn't get into this track, or a number actually, of the really kind of older punk tracks or at first blush of this compilation. It's only now that I'm older and I'm able to kind of work back the way and sort of, and I find it much more satisfying now than I did
I'm
then.
exactly the same. And I think, I think if you missed it in the 80s, because such a big part of this was energy.
Yeah.
Like, we'll go to, you know, Void and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, so much of it is just a bit, and it must have been amazing live and seen it first. But then, when you've listened to Smash, you know, the production of like 90s punk is like so good.
Yeah.
It just feels a bit empty, especially
And
when you're a
aggressive.
teenager and you're just wanting that sort of.
Aggressive as well, because the melody of like bands like Bad Religion, even in their earlier stuff, gave you like a foot in the door as a young guy. I know there'll be OG punk fans that at the time would have thought we were morons for not getting it, but all I can say is that it was just a bit of a steep learning curve and it was just a bit of a shock to the system. But hearing it now, I can totally understand why people were so excited by it.
Yeah.
It just didn't click with me at that age or when this compilation came out. So it was one that I skipped at the time. But I can listen to it now and be like, wow, that's cool. It's a good inclusion as well. Gives us, it's, you know, try to be cynical about it, but it gives it a lot of credibility having that on here, I think. As does the next one. A band that we've covered on the show before when we spoke to Ben Power, Iron Monkey, the track House of Anxiety, taken from the superb album Our Problem from 1998. That's the one with the controversial artwork by Mike Diana.
Oh, yeah.
It was the first person ever convicted of artistic obscenity in the USA for a comic called Boiled Angel. And it sounds just like all of that info. Ratty, sludgy, feral, an absolutely brilliant band. Like really, really good band. A few other bands tried to do similar things around them, but nobody quite had that totally uncontrived, nasty rawness that I think Iron Monkey had, and that includes a lot of the American bands. I mean, I Hate God will appear later on this. I think Iron Monkey are a better version of I Hate God.
Interesting, controversial.
I'd probably agree, to be honest.
I remember reading about this band, the Kerrang. Kerrang loved this band, particularly. I think around about this time when this record came out. I think Murder One had just come out, the singer's new band, and then he passed away.
Johnny
sadly.
Morrow, the singer who passed away quite young.
If I would have read an interview with this band if they were still going, because they'd broken up at this point, I would have ran out and bought this record.
Yeah. I think this is quite a tough. I mean, that's interesting because I think this sound is one of those ones, a bit like Discharge, that it's a lot to swallow if you're used to like kind of higher production stuff. It's quite a shock to the system. It's quite caustic. So I feel like Iron Monkey were, I don't know, but at the time I would have assumed they were more the kind of terrain of people who were either coming from the kind of ratty underground or were older people who could sort of adjust their sonic palette. I just think that at this time as well, this was probably just a little bit too raw for me to really take to, you know. But I mean, now I love it.
I think someone like Pantera, they're quite sludgy in places.
Yeah,
so,
but they're also slickly produced, you know.
Yeah, well, not all the records. Like Fuck a Display of Power isn't super slickly produced.
No, but I mean, Far Beyond Driven, for example, is just like so much more easy to listen to. I mean, you play it in a club, for example. I mean, those tracks got played in the Cat House at the end of the night for the big final, you know, mosh down.
For the fight.
This could never get played in the Cat House, man. Imagine the frequencies. Just like people would be leaving me lacerations in their face for the frequencies in this track. I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's a really good inclusion as well. And I think it's one of those ones that really bears the mark of Casey Chaos. You know?
Yeah. The next song is a song we've covered before.
You ever heard this? Refused. I think it's pronounced New Noise.
New Noise. Yeah. We did a whole episode in this band. So.
Oh yeah, I know.
But I think this was my first time hearing Refused. It was on this compilation.
Same here.
So like, well, it's done its fucking job.
By the way, it was after.
Good.
I think it was after this that the track started getting circulation on MTV2, because I heard it on this, and then soon after that video started to show up.
I've done a little bit of background research, and I was correct. The first home taping was
The
Hives, and I remember that one actually. Now looking at it, it was pretty good. It had.
They were from a good scene.
It had like Dead Kennedys and the Damned and the Saints on it, and it had John Spencer Blues Explosion, the Bell Rays, Detroit Cobras, so and the Helicopters as well.
I was going to say Helicopters.
Yeah, it was cool.
Must have been on there. Yeah.
But then they did a home taping, Volume 3, and I don't actually remember this one. I might have given up Kerrang by this point.
Music.
But it was Dexter from The Offspring did it. And it's an interesting mix. John Spencer gets another shout.
Can I guess a couple of the tracks that might be on it?
Yeah, go for it.
Social Distortion.
No.
TSOL.
Yes. Abolish Government.
Ensign.
No.
AFI.
Yes. Ever and a Day.
I haven't seen this CD.
It's a 50%.
That's 50%.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Now
there's some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
What else is on there,
so you've got stuff that you'd expect, like Pennywise, Dead Kennedys, but then you've also got NWA, Cypress Hill, Black Sabbath, Sweet Leaf Live.
Wow, that's a class song.
The Dwarves. But then it's also got Refused, and it's Shape of Punk to Come.
Yeah.
So that was like a year later, and then I think maybe people are just slowly discovering Refused.
Well,
it needs to go on our CD.
As we spoke about in the show with Grant, a band's band.
Yeah, they hated, like, they played to nobody, and that's why they broke up, because they hated it, you know. So
no, I mean, there's interviews on YouTube of Casey Chaos and Dennis Lixon together being interviewed at the same time. So again, I get the feeling they had a wee bit of rapport. I mean, it's a good song. If you're about later this year, you can see Quicksand on tour. We Refused to support them. I think Quicksand.
What remains of Refused?
have allowed Refused to go on last, but they're still out and about. This is Refused are fucking dead. We promise. No, really, we promise to.
Because Dennis has got a bad heart, so I don't think he can physically go on anymore.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how much of their poor later career new stuff they play. Number 9, Turbonegro, Get It On. I think they were Norwegian, if I remember. It's a live track because it's from their live album Darkness Forever.
Aye.
Which they're just not a band that should have an album called Darkness Forever when you see them. Again, Casey Chaos was in Scum alongside Happy Tom from this band. Yeah, he may dress...
I mean, it's a better version of Murder Dolls.
It is a bit. It's got other parallels as well. I mean, Happy Tom may dress like the gayest rocker on earth, but he definitely isn't. And his mate Spearman, JC Hughes of Eagles of Death Metal, really close friends with him. It was Thomas who interviewed them for Norwegian TV after the Bataclan. There's like a documentary thing online. I've got friends who are big fans of Turbonegro.
Same.
They're not my thing at all, really. I think it sounds a bit like Helicopters meets like a Swami John Rice project.
Oh yeah, I said the Hives crossed with Andrew WK.
Yeah,
that's
but
interesting.
not as good as any of those bands that we've named, I think. I mean, don't get me wrong.
The thing is, they'd been going for longer, so they were respected.
Oh, they're hugely. I mean,
like they were another band's band. They were like a band's fun band.
So Brendan O'Hare, Teenage Fan Club drummer, Macrocosmic, former booker at the Note, one of the most beloved guys in the Glasgow scene. It was his favourite band, and so I have to doff my cap to Brendan. He knew music, so I feel like maybe I'm just ignorant and I need to learn. Just as it stands, I just don't dig this band. I like Helicopters. I like Swami John Rice, almost everything he's done. I like Andrew WK. I quite like the Hives, even though they're sometimes a bit tepid. I just don't particularly get Turbonegro. It's fun, it's light, but I find their stuff really forgettable.
So in my first proper band, the bass player was a huge Turbonegro fan. And I tried to get into them and couldn't. But this is from Apocalypse Dudes, which is a 98 album.
Yeah, well, this is from the live album.
The original was I. By the way, his voice is cooked in this recording. He's totally shagged.
It's a nightmare.
And the guitar sound. It sounds like it came from a microphone at the back of the room, not the desk. It's a pretty poor recording. I mean, if I had to pay money for that live record, I'd be raging. But I remember this song because I actually think this song's pretty good. The original recording of it. I get glam. I get so much glam.
There's
for
big
this band.
T-Rex sort of
Massive. I think
the refrain really inane. It starts to really grate on me.
I think they're a pretty simple band at the end of the day, you know, in terms of like their songwriting structures and all that. They can all play like hell. But yeah, they do like two things really well, and it's like glammy, punky.
Can we just point out at this point as well how much, and this is going to be a continuing theme, how much Scandi stuff is on this compilation?
Oh, he was a big Scandi file.
Yeah, Scandi and also working class English as well. Like, there's a few.
Yeah. He knew his shit. The guy knew his shit. Man.
Yeah. Right. So number 10, Void, another one with bags of credibility. The track's called Who Are You? Now, Void were a DC punk band from 1980. They were one of the first bands to sort of incorporate metal into punk music, or elements of metal. This is taken from a split they did with a band called Faith.
On Discord Records.
It's a deep cut for hardcore geeks, deep, but it's a much beloved release. This is a really nice inclusion. It's Casey really showcasing his hardcore pedigree, and I think also, again, platforming something that probably deserves more attention than it gets.
Yeah, there's parts from the guitar sounds like a keyboard, which is totally random. It's just got that kind of really charming, ramshackle guys that can kind of play but are pushing themselves so hard that it's falling apart at the edges. Really, charming I think is the best word for it. It sounds like it was recorded using a shoe as well, which is also
the old shoe.
Pretty charming. You know, like I'd never really heard this band. I actually think it shows how much of a fan he is of DC hardcore and of Discord, because it is one of the deepest of deep cuts for that label.
Yeah.
I wondered if maybe he'd asked Mackay if he could put a Fugazi song on it, and Mackay said no.
Yeah, but also I think it's significant because this is a band that were already sort of starting to straddle genres. Like Void are acknowledged for bringing that little, it's not metal by any stretch of the imagination, but that little metallic element in. And I think Casey Chaos sees a fair bit of that in Amen. And so I think there's a little bit of him seeing them as a sort of proto, Amen. Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of time for it. I do want to throw in a reminder here, by the way. Remember, we also at the end of this have to pick a wild card as well as
you bring the bag?
As well as our favourite and our least favourite on it.
Oh yeah,
cool. So just mental notes as
that's
you go
fine.
through here.
We'll work on that. Yeah, I totally forgot this track was on here, but I got into Void about, I think, during lockdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, because I was never into hardcore, and I would think when I went back and listened to this, I was like, fuck it, I know this song now, but I think when I was 15 or 16, it was way too rough and unpolished for me.
For sure.
But yeah, now I love it. I love Void are great.
There's kind of a part of me that thinks that this was kind of Casey Kleos declaring war on the Kerrang readership.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Because like a lot of them would have been the same age as we were when it came out.
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
just listening to
and they would have
Kill
been
to
like,
this.
What the fuck is Discharge? Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
I hate this. You know.
I mean, I like that he's taking them.
It's
to
great.
School.
Yeah,
He's really taking people to school
yeah.
in this. The next one as well is, I mean, it's the other end of the spectrum, but track 11, Immortal, and the track Demonium. I mean, talking of pedigree, this is one of the Bergen OG black metal bands, to the extent they actually featured Hellhammer on kit at one point. It's, for me, this is definitely amongst the least interesting on here because I was already aware of this style of music, although I do understand that, that said, with hindsight, Casey was trying to expose Kerrang readers to stuff that was maybe, they'd maybe seen mentions of it, you know, but he was trying to be like, no, this is the good shit. This is the extreme shit. It's more Scandi. It's obviously a high-profile name, and it's a nod to Casey's eclectic and fairly extreme tastes at points as well.
But I mean, having said that, this is off their 7th album, so it's like, and this is like pretty well produced.
Yeah,
and I remember liking this a lot because it was metal as fuck, and it sounded like Dimmu Borgir, which I was already into.
Yeah,
and I remember going and buying an Immortal CD, but I think it was Pure Holocaust, which is second or third.
It's the second one, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember getting that back and putting it in my CD player and like listening to it, and then hitting the next track, and then hitting the next track, and I was just like, they all sound the same and awful, because it was just like
they all sound like your mum using an electric tin opener.
Yeah, exactly. But having said that, like 6 months later, I remember going, I think I might listen to that again, and then that, so like, it inadvertent or vicariously got me into like proper OG old school,
I suspect
awful sounding black metal.
Exactly what he was after.
Yeah, Abath is the frontman is a bit of a legend in the scene generally.
Yeah, but he quit, and they all had this acrimonious fallout where he was like, I'm out, and they kept going, and then he started Abath.
Yeah.
You know,
the very iconic Corpse Paint as well.
There's a song on this album
and hilarious
ended up
forest photos. Sorry, Dave, but can we just acknowledge?
Oh yes,
how bad
we must know. And also the one of him sliding down a hill and falling on his arse.
Yes,
that's
the guitar. That is. There's a gif of that which is going to be in the YouTube version right now.
But a song on this album ended up on a Tony Hawk soundtrack.
Did it?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Project 8, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't mind this at all. It's more kind of thrashy than black metal in places.
Yeah, it's got big Slayer vibes to it.
For sure. This version of this song is 2 minutes 51, right? And the original was 3 minutes 57, so they've actually faded it out, which is probably for
this CD.
On the CD, yeah. Like we've only got 72 minutes. I think
that's actually a thing that they used to occasionally do on cover mounts.
Yeah,
because I remember having some, like, I'll have burned the CD to computer and put it on my MP3 player, and then at some point I'll have got the album version, and I'll be like, oh, that's a minute longer, and it's not a single. Like I remember Lamb of God song being like half on a Terrorizer thing, and I was like, oh, they probably just cut it to fit it on a CD.
Digging into the mechanics of that, I wonder if there's like a bit of a trade-off there where it's like, oh, but this will mean that people have to buy your album to get the proper version. So the
maybe
the band are like, but also some bands might be like, why did we get the short straw?
Yeah, why this?
And also, why didn't you put a note saying this is only half the song?
Edit. So the 12th track, X-Ray Spex, I Am a Cliche. Another nod to a genre classic, band that started in 76 in London. Polystyrene, the front woman of this band's an icon of that movement.
Totally.
They're certainly a lot better known for a single called Oh Bondage Up Yours from 1977, same album I think it was. Neither of them, neither I'm a Cliche nor Oh Bondage Up Yours, were on the original album, but they were added to the reissue in 1991, which became like a big thing because it had loads of other good stuff by them, including some of their best tunes.
Yeah. He's going really deep into the punk lore for this one, for sure.
He's paying his dues here, you know what I mean? I think he's just nodding to... There's a bit of diversity, obviously, but also not just in the sound, but in the people playing. But I think it's just a nice doff of the cap again to his roots.
Only female performer on the record?
Two,
yeah,
There's
absolutely.
Coming up.
Completely wrong.
Is there a player in the catheters?
No, there's a quite large...
Yeah.
What if I missed?
The number one female icon of the punk movement, according to Virgin
Sorry,
Encyclopedia.
fuck's sake. I skipped this song because we've got a whole episode on her. Oops.
We're not cutting that though.
Not really.
But yeah, no, you're right.
cutting that.
I did notice, like, yeah, there's she's like only one of two female vocalists.
No,
probably.
actually, no, there's three. Because you're missing one as well. Well, I think we're going to have to just...
We have to make peace with the fact we fucked it a wee bit, yeah.
Anytime Mark opens his mouth, it's no more than 50% correct.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
The bass line in this song's dead cool. It's got a sax solo, which kind of reflects... I know a lot of the 77 punk in that era was quite straight ahead, but some of it was like pulling from other places, and I think sometimes people forget that, you know, and bringing in some disparate influences. It's a fairly good song, you know. It's a good representation of the era as well, I think.
You were a very
really
influential
catchy.
band.
Yeah, very, very catchy.
So, number 13, the Catheters, Build a Home. This came out in Sub Pop, but this band had actually started as a hardcore act. They just got gradually more bluesy. It has a bit of a post-hardcore feel. Reminds me a little bit of like Icarus Line and Blue Tip, mixed with a bit of the kind of groovier Swedish stuff like International Noise Conspiracy and the Helicopters. As a song, it's totally fine. It's not essential for me. I guess it's on here because he had a soft spot for them, but I don't think they were anything, you know, ground shaking.
Yeah, just kind of whatever for me. It seems like the kind of punk and roll kind of thing that Casey seemed to dig.
Yeah, I think this like falls into, like, I think some of the tracks are he's trying to like push people's boundaries, so that's like Immortal or what have you. Then other tracks he is educating and it's a history lesson, and then I feel like this falls into the third category. He's just kind of into them at the moment.
Aye, the contemporary,
Yeah.
sort of, like,
And it doesn't really stand out, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
So, contemporary points here. Number 14, Poison the Well with the track called Botchla. Pretty pivotal moment for not only new inductees to this band, but to this emerging sound. Now, bearing in mind when this landed, 2002, this sound was really taking off big time. It was about to go overground. Obviously, your Alexis on Fire mob had just made a bit of a mark as well. So this is
Glassjaw.
Glassjaw. So this is at the kind of launch pad moment for what would also become metalcore as well. So it's definitely the first time I heard that thing. I mean, I'd seen the names, but I'll be honest, I wasn't really too interested in it. But it was obvious when I heard this that this was starting to turn heads. I remember people picking this one out from this album as being, I don't know, a standout. It's not for me, really, but it's certainly a landmark moment.
Dave?
Yeah, for me, it was one of the biggest songs of this album at the time.
Yeah.
I would say it's, I mean, we've talked about Poison the Well.
We have.
It's a little bit cringy now, but it had such a mix of emo and hardcore and metal for me. I just absolutely it ticked all my 16-year-old boxes.
Yeah, defining sound of like my early days in Glasgow, especially.
But, you know, it introduced me to this band. I didn't actually end up liking this record that much, but I loved the later records. Yeah, but it's still a massive song.
Going to go see them?
Nostalgic. Oh, I remember seeing them like 2 years after this, supporting Dillinger Escape Plan. And
Oh, well, fuck it then. No need to go and see them then.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Mark, I think having a staff night yet?
No.
Taking me to see some metalcore.
They're actually okay live. There's a live video of them doing Outbreak last year on YouTube, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we did a whole episode in this band, so I will refer you to that episode.
Absolutely.
This is probably one of the better songs on the records. It is pure metalcore meets post-hardcore stuff. I don't hate it, but it's a pretty good representation of the era, all things considered.
So, next one is another nod to his proper punk origins here from Casey. The Adverts were part of the original punk explosion. In fact, Gay Advert was labelled the first female punk star by the Virgin Encyclopedia. Polystyrene and Susie Sue would probably also have a claim in that as well, but you're talking about 1976, 1977. This track was on some of the definitive kind of punk collections, you know, the kind of, I'd say posthumous, I don't mean the people, but I mean the kind of retrospective punk collections. This track's on a few of them. Although a track called Gary Gilmore's Eyes was their breakthrough song, and was actually one of the first punk songs to be like a commercial mainstream hit. I think it got to number 18 in the UK.
It's a good song. I've never heard this band before. TV Smith is still touring, still playing.
Yeah.
I think he actually played here a couple of months ago, and he's in it. I think he's almost 70 now as well. I've got a friend who tours with who has toured with him quite a lot. It's really cookie cutter stuff. The vocal melody's got a kind of sophistication that a lot of our contemporaries kind of lacked, I think.
Yeah, cookie cutter, but it was template creating at the
Yeah.
time.
Totally, yeah. No, it's a cool song. I'd actually probably go back and explore this band a little bit more after listening to this.
Here's a belter, number 16, Zyklon.
Formerly Zyklon B.
Well, not really, not really. We'll parse that in a second, but Deduced to Overkill, which is just like a fucking weird, bad translation or something. Deduced to Overkill. Side project of two Emperor members, started in 1998. Not the same entity as Samoth's previous side project, which was called Zyklon B. Unsurprisingly, Zyklon B was named after the gas. This one, Zyklon, apparently has nothing to do with the gas.
Okay. It's a really common word, Zyklon.
Can you believe it? He says it's cyclone, which is cyclone in, I'm guessing, Norwegian, but with a Z. So just a coincidence that it's...
Could be possible, but seems unlikely.
It's a fucking stretch. What about the fact that Emperor's drummer Faust, part of that extreme right-wing movement of National Socialist black metal, he was in jail at the time on account of having murdered a man in a park for the crime, as he saw, of being gay, as well as
That's not a crime. We should let's be clear there.
I said as he saw it.
I know.
As well as multiple counts of arson. A real dog shit guy, certainly at the time. Scandinavia being Scandinavia, he was sentenced to a grand total of 14 years in 1994 and then only ended up serving 9 of them. But he was the lyricist and sort of a conceptual driver for this project. So I guess his Emperor bandmates were like, oh mate, shite, you're in jail. How about you write some songs for us and we'll play them? So when he left jail, he actually toured with these guys, and it seems that he also played live, although if you go on the likes of Wikipedia, it doesn't tell you that he played live. But our man Joe McGlynn, who was on here last week, he toured with them. He toured with Zyklon when he was in the band Man Must Die. And, I mean, funnily enough, Joe was saying that Faust was probably the only friendly member of the band, the only person that made any effort to talk to them, and looked like a football casual. He wore trackies and trainers and had a shaved head and did not look at all like somebody who was a black metaler, let alone, had done time for burning down Fantoff Church or whichever church he decided to burn down, or churches. I just don't know what to make of the character of people who associated with Faust at that point. I mean, yes, they're his friends and his bandmates. On the other hand, he's in jail for murdering a totally innocent man on the basis of this extreme prejudice that he held. And I mean, certainly I wish I'd looked into it in more detail because I can't recall off the top of my head, but I don't remember him being particularly contrite about it. The people around him, the likes of Hellhammer and stuff like that, certainly weren't contrite about it. They're kind of gloating about it. So yeah, I mean, Zyklon musically, they're way better than Immortal for me. I think the actual track is much more interesting. I enjoyed it more to listen to. I just have that awkward, uneasy feeling about this whole gang. But yeah, I mean, it's very well played. It's a pretty decent song. Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it was another one I loved because it was, black and death metal. But I'm afraid HMV and Inverness didn't stock it, so I could only listen to this one song. I always wanted to buy it, and then I think I'd probably, by the time I'd found it, I was probably discovered how bad the people were.
Exactly.
I wasn't expecting this to be as heavy as it is. It's actually really good for what it is. This black and death metal.
Yeah.
I like the guitars a lot. Cool blast beats, really cracking guitar solo as well.
Yeah, it's interestingly structured as well, and it's it's a cool song. But
Cave-In, number 17.
Cave-In, I like Cave-In. I hope Cave-In.
You must have heard Cave-In before this.
I'd heard Cave-In before this.
Yeah.
This is taken from the Tides of Tomorrow EP. The track's called The Calypso, which was, I'll be honest, a disappointing arrival in 2002, coming off the back of a really excellent album called Jupiter that I think
I'd love to hear that live.
Must be approaching some sort of anniversary soon, but hopefully, you'll see them on the road at some point.
I think we have an episode on that as well.
We do have an episode specifically about Jupiter. Dave, do you like Cave-In in the album Jupiter?
Oh, fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah. You should
couldn't recommend.
Give it a listen. Anyway, listening to this, so at the time, it was kind of disappointing, right? Because it was a bit mealy-mouthed. It was a bit wishy-washy. there's I think there's a track in it called Dark Driving that I think was my favourite on it, and it was good, but it never hit the heights of Jupiter. But I have to say, going back and listening to it now, it's more consistent with Jupiter than I gave it credit for at the time. It just lacked something, and it certainly wasn't as hook-filled as Antennae, which the album that followed it, which kind of went more towards the sort of, they were touring with Foo Fighters, and they went for like really big melodies on that album, and this kind of feels like a little bit of a middle ground. This was potentially a really amazing inclusion for me, and I like that he gave Cave In a shout, because they're a great band and they deserved it. It's just the track itself, I'm not sure how many favours this would have done Cave In amongst people who were not as yet converted. I guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you'd put on Juggernaut, or if you put on something like Big Riff or something, Until Your Heart Stops, Beyond Hypothermia, some of that content, I guess there's more people would have been initially impressed by that. This was representative of where the band were going. I'm just not sure it's a great sort of calling card.
Yeah, I think it's very kind of psychedelic and alt rock, and I really hadn't heard this before. I don't think
the hook, that weird kind of chromatic shift, whatever, I don't really know how to describe the way the melody progresses, to be honest, but it's actually remarkably catchy. Like in the years since, it's stayed with me a lot more than I thought it would.
It's guitars sound great in it. It's good production. I think this was a contract fulfillment thing for Hydra before they jumped to the major for Antenna,
right?
Which is like this but on steroids, really. But it's not the Cave In that I like.
Yeah, I mean, I did like it. There was something about Cave In at this point, because I think I'd maybe heard Big Riff first on a Terrorizer compilation, and then this. And
that rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, there was something kind of otherworldly about them that I got really into, and I was like, okay, yeah. But yeah, I do like this, but I don't think this particularly got me into Cave In.
Exactly, and I just feel like it's a tiny bit of a missed opportunity if you're wanting to try and platform the band, but maybe he didn't have a choice. He was like, I want to put you on something, and they were like, well, this is the one we're giving you, that's it, take it or don't. 18, The Birthday Party, Sonny's Burning. I think this is a great inclusion, but I'll be honest, I did not like it at the time at all. Hands Up Who Wants to Die, one of the best first lines of literally any song ever written. Absolutely fucking iconic. It's an iconic track by a landmark band. It's not, I mean, we don't have a fraction of the time it would take to do this justice, but The Birthday Party are so important. It's an odd cut if you consider Kerrang readers, even though a lot of their favourite bands were hugely into The Birthday Party. I mean, that's like everything from Melvins, Nirvana, Jesus Lizard, all those kind of bands that were regularly in Kerrang. It's just a little bit in the outskirts of what Kerrang would cover, and weirdly enough, closer to NME, or even creeping into like some of the Mojos. It's like The Birthday Party were such an awkward band in that sense that they should have been more Kerrang-ish, but they just weren't. So yeah, the weird side of alternative that I think a lot of kids, including myself at the time, would have been alienated by, because it is kind of tough to digest. But wow, in hindsight, fair play to Casey Chaos for putting this on there, because it is, yeah, I mean, you're getting schooled again, and we might not have wanted to hear the lesson at the time, but in the long run, he was bang on. Great inclusion.
Not hugely familiar with this band, to be honest.
Mark, trust me. I mean, they're a band that I'm like, we need to do an episode on them, but it's such an undertaking to do The Birthday Party, to try and capture the... I mean, I honestly don't know if I can think of many bands, I mean, beyond the Beatles, that have a bigger footprint in terms of like alternative music. They are so influential, like so different.
I think this was the second Nick Cave song I'd heard after Red Right Hand on the Scream soundtrack. But I remember I loved this. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was just like fucking chaotic and
manic.
Yeah,
manic. Fucking junkie music. It's just fucking frantic and crazy.
I'm not sure I want to get to know The Birthday Party after listening to this. So.
I suspect academically you would be really, your curiosity would be really piqued by just what an unbelievably original and inventive and just music world changing band they were. It's truly like actually pretty staggering what that band achieved.
I know Laura Jane Grace is a huge fan of The Birthday Party, particularly not Nick Cave, but the other guy who was Howard something.
We'll save that for the episode.
One of the other players in it, like she was a huge fan of him and his solo stuff as well as the birthday party themselves.
Number 19. I know. I kind of feel like we're all going to agree on this. Nasum with the track This is noisy and frantic and punishing, and I really like Nasum. Even just for the sort of sensory overload that they give you. Like Casey Chaos knows this is a great opportunity to introduce some new metal fans to really intense music. And also, but just props to that guitar solo tone. That is wild. That is gnarly.
Yeah, funnily enough, I think this was like, I'd heard this band several times because I'd bought Relapse.
I was going to say the Relapse Contaminated Volume 2.
Yeah,
they were on.
I think they were on. They had like a couple of tracks on each, just because all their tracks are like 20 seconds long. I actually think I already owned this album when I heard this, so I was fucking preaching to the converted.
I mean, again, this is one that at the time it was too much for me. It really was too much for me. But in hindsight, it's one of those ones where I'm just like, man.
I remember playing this. I don't know if it was this track, but I remember playing them to some pals, and I was like, Slipknot, listen to this. You should listen to this. And then they were like, ugh, it's awful. It's like, no, it's fucking great.
So it's from Inhale Exhale, which was their first album, I believe.
Yes.
This album's held in very high regard by people for kind of bringing grindcore back to prominence after years of it kind of not really doing anything. These guys are seen as being really influential in that regard.
And they brought like big metal production to grindcore.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There was a more metallic, thick kind of like something that you could... It was more accessible to people that their ears were adjusted. You know?
Yeah. It's quite noisy, cacophonic even. His voice is actually really, really good too. The singer actually died in the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia, which is a shame. And that's what brought the band to the end basically. But no, it's a really cool tune. I'd actually probably go back and listen to them, I think.
Oh,
yeah, their first two records are amazing.
Yeah. So at the time, much more to my kind of tastes was track 20, the Distillers and the track City of Angels.
The whole episode on this record.
There is just, on its merits, belter of a tune. She's got a belter of a voice. This was the one that I was not entirely sure how much this was purely Casey.
I've written this. Maybe the one on this album that might have been put in or pushed by promo.
Exactly, yeah. This is the one that I was like,
because I think if this was just a normal Kerrang CD with fucking Taproot on it, this would also have been on it.
Yeah. It also seems like a huge track to just get them to donate. I mean, this is easily the standout track on Sing Sing Death House, I think. It was released in February of that year. So maybe there's an argument that the single had already served its purpose. But yeah, it's just a brilliant song. The one thing about it that I hadn't noticed until today is at the very, very end, it kind of cracks me up how out of time the crashes are and the guitar strikes are. Their final bam, bam, they're just so badly done. It's amazing that it made the take.
We've got a whole episode on this record, so I will refer you to that. But I will say that the thing about what you're saying about maybe it being a sort of put on by the magazine, I mean, the Transplants were kicking about at this time, who Travis Barker were a part of, and one of the bands on his label, the Kinnison. Not the Kinnison, is it?
Yeah.
Aye, but are also on it. So he's maybe he is listening to a lot of stuff. I mean, I can imagine this song was getting played everywhere in LA.
Yeah. I mean,
constantly.
No doubt he'd been to the fucking Viper room with Brody. You know, like they all knew each other, so I'm sure he could have just asked. But it might not have been as like cynical as, oh yeah, this one is going on because we need to release it. But it might have been like, oh, why didn't you put that on? Because you can have it for this. Yeah.
I would have put on the song Sing Sing Death House. It would have been much more in fitting with the vibe, I think.
Yeah. But I do remember this one standing out because it's like, oh, this one's got a chorus.
So
I haven't heard a chorus.
I know, exactly. It really spoke to me at the time, yeah. 21, another OG shout out from Casey Chaos, Bedlam by the band Scream, formed in 1981 alongside Minor Threat and government issue bands like that. DC Hardcore Vanguard, as I believe they're referred to. The Stahl brothers went on to do Wool. One of them would join Foo Fighters temporarily. Dave Grohl and I believe Jay Robbins, a guy called Dave Grohl.
I don't know who that is.
It's been a while since he's come up on this podcast.
Yeah. I think Jay Robbins as well both passed through the ranks of this band. It was this band that Nirvana sort of signed them from, if you will, and legit proper old school influence. even if, being honest, the tune's kind of meh. I'm not a huge fan of Scream.
Have we not done another Covermount mixtape which has got a song from the grunge Scream album in 1993?
Yes, exactly.
Which is a thing to behold. Yeah, this song's cool. It's a deep Discord cut, I think, which is what I like. It straddles snotty 70s punk and hardcore really well. You can kind of see the crossover in those scenes in this song. Like the guitar sounds like it was recorded in a steel bin. but it's cool. Like that was the era. Do you know what I mean?
22, I Hate God, and the track Jackass in the Will of God. Again, really odd sort of AI generated sentence. Came out in 2000 at this band's peak, this tune. It was taken from the album Confederacy of Ruined Lives, but that was released at the same year. They'd also released the Southern Discomfort compilation of like EPs and stuff. The guitarist, Jimmy Bower, in this band is also the drummer of Down, as well as playing guitar, I think, in Crowbar. Was it guitar he played in Crowbar? He played in Crowbar and Corrosion of Conformity as well, anyway, I know that. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool tune. I mentioned that it really fits alongside Iron Monkey.
Mm-hmm.
I also just feel Iron Monkey are a better band. Iron Monkey are, I think, more vicious. I think more like... This sounds more American. It sounds more deep and dank and southern. It does sound that kind of... We talked a bit about them when we did, I think, Barness. I think we gave them a mention on that
and
show.
Down as well.
And Down, yeah. Frankly, this band are too loud, right? And I say that...
just too damn loud.
So, funnily enough, I think Dinosaur Jr. are playing Glasgow tonight as well. It was another band that is just too fucking loud. Right? They've read their own... They've swallowed their own hype, right? And they've been like, oh, we need to just be as loud as fuck live. And actually going to see them when I've seen them was a really quite a deeply unpleasant experience, because it's not that I'm scared of loud music. Don't get me wrong. I like loud music as long as the balance of the music is but loudly balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing I Hate God with our multiple stacks, it was insufferable. Like, I couldn't really hear anything else that was happening, and therefore songs that I liked by the band were just a mess. And I feel there was too much of like, oh, this is who we are. We have to kind of impress by sheer, I don't know, like absurd extent. And I felt the same when I saw Dinosaur Jr. They were fucking garbage, and it was just literally like, oh, he's got 8 marshals on stage. That doesn't make any sense, because this sounds terrible. And I Hate God frustrate me, because I do want to like them more than I do, but I don't.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it, but I know what you mean. And they also... They never quite grabbed me. I could get how influential they were, and I liked this track, but then I listened to Down, and I just thought it was a better version of it.
I like I Hate God because they're not as bad as Phil Anselmo as people.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I like the groove of it. I love when it goes Sabbathy around 1 minute 45.
Mm-hmm. So do they, clearly.
Evidently. The bass plays a nice counter melody there, which is very, very, very Sabbath. And I
that's
that.
When they totally fade the bass up in the mix side to actually let it ride, and it works really well. Yeah. But that's fucking part of the problem with Down. It's like, oh, that's fucking good, but I can't hear it because it's so, like just fucking too much of the fucking guitar. Sorry, I mean, I hate God.
Yeah, so the next song is Division of Laura Lee. Need to get out of my fucking ears, by the way. Holy shit.
So this isn't great. Right.
This is not good. Do you know what? Actually, this is exactly of the era of, like, you know, what is it? What
the Hives?
The Hives, the Vines, the Jet, the Datsuns. You know what? This band exists in a world where the Vines, Jet, and the Datsuns exist, and I don't want to exist in the same world.
Were they on the Hives curated one?
No, they weren't.
No,
I mean, no,
because they were too close to them. It sounds a lot like the Hives, but it's got less of the high energy of the Hives.
No attitude at all.
It's just a few BPM slower. It's a bit milder. I only just learned that they were Swedish and also skateboarders, so maybe that influenced them a wee bit. They were one of the names that was frequently in Kerrang, but I had honestly, as far as I'm aware until this, never once listened to. And again, Casey had a real thing for Scandi music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, this could be a Kerrang plant.
No, this feels like something he was just listening to that day, maybe, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll put that in."
I kind of feel like the skateboarder thing as well. This could be a bunch of guys that he was backstage just totally bonded with, and did them a solid, you know. 24, a band we've discussed way fucking back when we did At the Gates, Dave. The Haunted Trespass.
I totally forgot that this one was on here too, and I mean, I'd maybe heard a Haunted track on a Terrorizer magazine, but I mean, fucking hell, what a riff.
Yeah.
What a song, what an album, what a band. I mean,
just also flag up more Swedes.
More sweet.
more Swedes, yeah, totally.
So I don't like this, right? But
I didn't think you'd like
but
this.
I'm reluctant to criticise it because I feel they are obviously very good and very much loved.
Mm-hmm.
As we said, ex-members at the gates. I remember people freaking out after the Haunted played at Barfly in Glasgow. Rest in peace. It just ain't for me, not at all.
If you liked Iron Maiden, you would like this.
Maybe, yeah. That's probably true. This is from the Haunted Made Me Do It, which also seems like a really landmark album amongst friends whose taste I respect.
Yeah, definitely.
It just doesn't work for me at all.
I think this song is cool. They're a lot more straight ahead than at the gate. It's a lot more metal.
Yeah. It's just
but
thrash.
The Swedish death metal riff when it comes in is pretty sick, though.
Yeah.
I will say. They've got Ola England playing for them now, who's just an incredible guitar player. He's all over YouTube. I think he's a co-songwriter for the band now.
Oliver England.
Ola
England. All right.
Yeah. And
these Winterspoons, they're all over England.
I think the guitar player.
These immigrants.
Oliver England. I think the guitar player from At the Gates left. He's no longer in the band.
Right.
He was replaced, and Ola England replaced him. So
Yeah.
I mean, like I said about even Zyklon and Satyricon, bands that I didn't like at the time, like a style of music that I didn't like at the time. Listening to it now, I'm actually like, nah, this is pretty good. This is one that I've come back to, and I'm still like, nah, it's still just not for me. I don't think this is a style I'm ever going to.
not floating your boat.
No. 25.
Oh fuck!
Now your boat is supremely floated. Oh, catch her in a boat.
Mortiis, parasite god. So basically, one guy, unsurprisingly from Norway in Scandinavia, Håvard Ellefsen, still playing, but
still wearing prosthetics and everything.
as a three-piece band, ex-member of Emperor, believe it or not.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah. So supposedly, like the Mortiis character originally came about because of some multi-platformed art project with a bigger story narrative arc that eventually just got lost and it just became a musical character. He set out to create, quote, dark dungeon music, and supposedly as a result of that, this is that Mortiis and that quote has a sizable influence on the whole genesis of the dungeon synth genre,
really?
which I didn't know. So his career is divided into 3 eras. His first era, and this happened kind of retrospectively when this album came out, but his first era prior to this was just dank synth. It was just like, dungeon synth stuff, instrumental, which again I guess invites parallels with Burzum, stuff like that. And the second era is this, which was effectively a kind of gothy synth pop. And then the third era became industrial, like much heavier and fuller fleshed out. He came back with an era 0, like fucking Pol Pot of dungeon synth. He came back with era 0, which then sort of transitioned back into the sort of instrumental era 1, because he hated his early material, but then gradually sort of got back into it. And after years of doing all that, he then ended up just mainly doing industrial stuff up to date. The tune itself's a bit naff, and I mean it's really a bit fucking cringy and naff. But he's a more interesting character than I think we probably give him credit for. He seemed like as somebody that had never listened to him, he seemed like a kind of comedy Marilyn Manson.
That was exactly it. He was, because I remember there was a review, an interview with him in a Kerrang, and like he walked the interviewer like 25 miles up a snowy hill in Norway, and like to like an abandoned shack. And it was like, oh yeah, this is where I live. And I was like, nah, the guy definitely lives in a little fucking condo down in like, Oslo. Like, this is literally just an abandoned shack, but he had his vibe. Yeah, to me, the idea of Mortiis was always much more interesting than the reality of Mortiis.
Well, it's Mark, what did you make of this music?
I guess, do you know what, the song's that is a bit shit. It sounds like really rubbish Depeche Mode.
Yeah,
like this would definitely get played.
Depeche Mode.
See,
Asylum.
At the Mission in Edinburgh, right, had an upstairs floor which was for the goths, and this was the jam.
The thing is, like, he gets done dirty by the track listing because there's another guy who's right next to him who just totally bodies him.
It's interesting,
completely bodies him.
Because like it's interesting that these two are next to each other, because it's like, oh, Casey Koss is also into sort of gothy electro, but he hasn't let anybody know that until the last 2 songs. And it's like, I like the worst and the best of it.
Yeah, it's and like, oh, by the way. And what, as you say as well, it's odd that he puts the 2 of them together, because none of the, like, Immortal and Satyricon and stuff were all spread out, and the whole compilation is is, to be fair, defined by like whiplash, because you're going from like X-Ray Spex to fucking Immortal and Zyklon and stuff like that, right? But yeah, it then follows it with Gary Newman's Down in the Park, rather famous,
total classic.
rather famous song to number 26 here. Wee bit of Robot Rape to just finish things up as well. I mean, great track, enough said.
Yeah, there's not much more to say.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't quite grab me back when I was a teenager, but
Same.
like, it's another history lesson, I guess.
I have to say, the Foo Fighters cover of this was actually the first thing that got me into it.
Oh.
Yeah, I did Down in the Park as a B-side. I think it was to Everlong or Monkey. Was it Monkey Wrench? Everlong or Monkey Wrench. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. They also did a cover of Requiem by Killing Joke, and I went and listened to the original. So I was like, oh, they're all right.
Requiem.
Yeah. Pretty dark subject. We spoke about this in one of the episodes,
Yeah.
didn't we?
It's like a cracking song. I feel as though he's somebody that we should cover at some point. But
Gary
it's
Newman.
Gary Newman, but it's a tall task.
And we finished things with an Amen as previously unreleased track, Whores of Hollywood. It's a surprisingly solid inclusion for a previously unreleased track.
Yeah, it seems to come from the or from the Amen record.
Self-titled
Yeah,
sessions,
yeah.
Fairly solid, rampaging punk stuff by their standards. It's not going to set the world alight, but if you were a fan of Amen and you were getting this because you really liked Casey, then I think this would probably be on a few compilation tapes.
Yeah,
If you-
nice
if you had a-
inclusion.
If you had a mini disc player, you could add it to your mini disc at this point.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's a good inclusion in the record. It's good to have a little bit of him represented as well.
Yeah, because I don't think that the Hives were on the Hives one.
Too humble.
Yeah,
Too
but
humble, those
I mean,
lads.
yeah, stick on your own band. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's like something that people don't have. I quite like that. Aye, you're giving them something special.
It's
So
like a minute 30 as well, so it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty good. Succinct. As I say, even though a lot of the tracks were a bit too much for me at the time, I still got a lot out of this. I feel it sort of stretched the boundaries of what I could actually tolerate musically. It was a significantly enlightening compilation, and I look back on it with a lot more admiration now, even given that he actually did something with a wee bit of personality invested in it.
Yeah.
In terms of your highlight, we'll go one at a time. Dave, do you have a highlight that jumps out here?
Well, I guess do you mean a highlight now or a highlight then? Because that changes for me.
Well, let us know.
Because I think for me, probably the biggest track when I had it was Botchla, or Refused. But now going back, I'm probably thinking maybe Discharge, actually.
Yeah.
Or Void, actually. I think I'll go Void.
Void's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good
I
one.
think Void is the one that
it's
I'm
a cool
like,
choice
I
as
fucking
well.
love this song.
It keeps up that Dave Cool Guy brand
Yeah.
that the listeners are so into.
That is all I'm here for.
That is all it's here for. Just for the vibes.
Continue the brand.
Mark?
Between it's Nasum maybe for me, or the Adverts perhaps. I mean, back then it would have been the Distillers,
Yeah.
or Refused.
Yeah.
But those two, I think I'm going to go and listen to them a little more. Yeah, probably one of those two, I'd say.
I would say at the time, likewise, I was incredibly excited that New Cave and stuff was coming out.
Mhm.
So I remember that was the thing that really made me fucking jump in the street to get this. The Refused track was a big hitter, and I really liked the Distillers track. It was just such a big melody, the biggest melody on the record. But I think now, going back to it, the most interesting track on it's probably for me Iron Monkeys, House Anxiety, because it's so out there and they're just so fucking legit as a band. You know, they're just so like did their own thing, succeeded, and didn't succeed to greater extent despite of it. And it's a great inclusion. I'm really glad they put it on there. What about your low light, Dave?
I mean, toss up between Mortiis because it is bad, or Division of Laura Lee because it's boring.
Aye.
So, to be honest, I'm going to say Division of Laura Lee because I think at least Mortiis is trying something weird.
I think Division of Laura Lee is probably the most unremarkable track on here. I mean, the Catheters is a bit better than it. Not much, but a bit. I think I'm not a big fan of the Scream track, but I think Scream are a great band. Well, an important band. I probably I really don't enjoy the Haunted track in it, but I enjoy the idea of the Haunted more than I enjoy the idea of Immortal, and I really don't like the Immortal track. So I would. Fuck it, I'll agree with you. Division of Laura Lee. It's just really so tepid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild card. Now that's the one that can be good, bad, interesting, weird, fucking ridiculous, whatever you think.
My wild card, then I'm thinking probably. I probably X-Ray Spex then, because it's nothing like anything I'd listen to
On Kerrang.
Kerrang especially, and I didn't have anybody in my life giving me music like that, so it was the first time I'd kind of listened to that at all, and it's even now I'm like, oh, I never really listened to that sort of stuff, but it's interesting as fuck. So.
Mark?
Iron Monkey or I Hate God. I like Baroness, like Mastodon. Never really went down the sludge hole before, so I think going down the sludge hole maybe in my future.
I'll show you around. I've got a head torch. Been down here for a while.
I think actually partly inspired by Mark's reaction, I'm going to go for Birthday Party because as I said, they are a band that slipped through the cracks of Kerrang a lot, and just the older I've got, the more I mean, I was a huge noise rock guy. And I didn't know where it was coming from. Mm-hmm. All these bands that I'm listening to, and I'm like, where are these guys getting part of this? Where does that saturated bass tone come from? Where does that pure sort of sociopathic vocal come from? Where did David Yow get a lot of his ideas? Where did fucking, Todd Traynor and a lot of the kind of shellacs that and then you hear Birthday Party and you're like, wow, man, these guys fucking made this out of whole cloth. Like that's just a thing they did. So having them on here, I think, is really, really interesting. I don't think a lot of kids would have gotten it. It's cool that you actually liked it at the time. I don't think many people would have been mad into it at the time. But yeah, that was a great inclusion. I'm really glad you put that on here.
Great. Well, that was fun. That was probably the most fun we've had doing one of them, I would say.
It was probably the best compilation.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's curated and that it's also sequenced as well. I'm pretty, it does jolt. But I think that's deliberate.
Yeah,
makes me really miss CDs. Other ones don't, but this does.
So I literally did listen to this on the CD player at home. Had to plug it back in again, but it was quite good in that as well because it's maybe a pain in the arse to go and switch it as well. So you just have to play through. And
you know how you talk about albums and the overall the aesthetic and even the font and just the image that it gives you when you buy it, lays up what it's going to do to you emotionally, and to me that is an album. It works as a package, it works as a sequence of tracks, and I listen to it from start to end a lot, and it's got the care and attention of
many albums, and it's also got that element that we've just highlighted of how certain tracks grow at different rates with you. We've spoken about. The album track suddenly ends up being your favourite. I'm picking Iron Monkey out and that's a song that initially I probably wouldn't have listened to. So yeah,
lovely
stuff.
Dave, it's been lovely to have you back.
It's been an absolute treat.
It has.
And you're in the new studio space as well.
It's quite warm, actually.
Yeah, it's very warm.
What an inauguration, eh? His Majesty. It's like
the sludge hole.
The Queen
We're in the sludge hole.
You should call it the sludge hole from now on. The Variety Bar will not like that. Variety Bar in Glasgow, by the way, come here if you are in the tune.
No Mean Radio.
No Mean Radio.
Courtesy of a community radio station and podcasting studio. Fantastic. Place is absolutely minted. Too good for guys like us.
Far too good.
Yeah, but hopefully you'll see us here again.
Yeah, next week, no idea what we're doing. I'm on holiday.
Yeah, Mark's going to a wedding in Latvia.
Where it's going to rain.
Lovely.
Edgy.
On the beach.
Yeah, look out for Russian invasions.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.